A few months ago, Brother Dennis, one of our friars, who's the one who assigns people to go on, he writes a diocese and seeking parishes for the annual mission appeal. And he said that St. Joseph and Avon Lake has been given to us. Is anyone willing to go there and preach about the missions? I told him I would, and there were a couple of reasons. One is I'm on the province board, and we have a meeting this coming week for 2 days in Cary, Ohio. I don't know if any of you know where Cary is. Many people do because of the shrine. So we have a meeting there, and since I was going to be coming to Ohio, I thought, well, I can come early because I have relatives, actually. I live in Avon Lake, and I have 2 sisters, one that lives in Westlake and one in North Homestead. So this would give me an opportunity to come and visit with them for a few days. I actually live in Minnesota, Bloomington, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. That's where that big mega mall, or whatever, Mall of America, whichever you call it, is. It's within a stone's throw of our parish. I'm retired, and I live there with the friars and help out wherever I possibly can. So it's good to be here at St. Joe's. I actually, before this weekend, I had never been in this church. I've been in just about every church in Lorain County because I lived at St. Anthony's down the street here for 7 years. And I ministered in Elyria, and so it's an opportunity, too, to see St. Joseph's Church. So that's a little bit about why I'm here, and I'm really here to ask for money for the missions. Now, I'd like to kind of tie this in with the gospel today, the gospel about the wheat and the weeds. God is, as we all know, and we're assuming, is all loving. And he's all good and all merciful, all those things. So God cannot create evil. That's one thing God can't do because it would go against his nature. He wills good all the time because of his unconditional love. And so God wills the salvation of every human person, whoever has lived and will live. That's God's will. We came into being at this particular time in this particular place, and God has a plan for each of us, but ultimately his plan is that we are with him in heaven forever. That's God's will. But one of the gifts that he has given us is the gift of free will. So the choice is ours. God does not interfere with that free will. If he did, he would be controlling, and love does not control. So this gospel, in a way, is about that he created good, but evil also sprang up. And we know that evil is a reality. All we have to do is read the papers, watch TV. It's not news unless it's about something bad. That's too bad, because there are so many good things going on in this world that we don't hear about or don't see on the TV, and yet there are a tremendous amount of good things going on, and you're part of it. And so we have the good and the bad, and he says, don't get rid of the bad, because sometimes people will say, well, how can a good and gracious and loving God allow this to happen? Why doesn't he interfere and do something about it? He wouldn't be God if he did, because that would be very controlling, again, to interfere with our free will. So God really never sent anybody to hell. If they go to hell, they've chosen it, not God, because of their free will. They turned their back on God and made a bad choice. We all made bad choices in life, as well as good choices, and there's consequences to every choice we make. whether it's good or bad. There are maybe two main pains in life. The pain of discipline, which is not a heavy pain, but it takes discipline to learn discipline in our life in whatever way we possibly can. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's well worth it. The more heavy pain, if I can put it that way, is the pain of regret. We might regret a choice we made or something we did or whatever the situation is, and that could last forever in our hearts, the pain of regret. And that's a heavy pain. And hopefully the ultimate pain will not be that we've chosen hell, because it was our will and not God's will. Pride gets in there very subtly. Now, since I've mentioned about making choices in life, I'm here to ask that you make a choice to give for the Franciscan missions. That's your choice. I'm asking that I know there are envelopes in the pews, and I also know that they were in your packet, I think, before this week, for you to think about and be as generous as possible, always realizing that God will not be outdone in generosity. The more we give, the more it comes back to us. It's part of life. Part of that peace prayer, it's in giving that we receive. And if we give for the right reasons, not for selfish reasons, God rewards us in so many ways, at least unexpected. So often people say, I want to be happy, but they center in on themselves instead of getting out of themselves. And I really believe at the moment of death, when we're face to face with God, we're naked before God, He's not going to ask how famous we were, how wealthy we were, how successful we were in the eyes of the world. There's nothing wrong with those three things. He's going to say, how much did you love? How much did you get out of yourself and think of somebody else and reach out whatever way you possibly could to help that person or those people, whatever the situation called for? That's what He's going to judge us on, the works of mercy, how much we got out of ourselves and our generosity of ourselves. There are many ways. We are all missionaries, you as well as I. I've never been called to the foreign missions. I've been in many parishes in the Midwest, and that was my calling. But I've lived with missionaries, with many friars who have been in the missions, some in Honduras, El Salvador, Zambia, Africa, Uzbekistan, Russia. I've lived with friars who have been there and come back, and they've taught me a lot of things. So I'm preaching in their name, because just asking us, as we are all missionaries, to help one another. We're all one church. And so if we, in our generosity, would be giving to that, that's very much appreciated. But there's other ways of giving too. Keeping in prayer, praying for the missions and missionaries, and praying for the church throughout the world, especially in those areas that are so sorely needed, that might be persecuted in great ways. So those are other ways. And also, sometimes people have been called to give of themselves in the missions, not just for religious missionaries. One of the friars that I lived with along the line was from Toledo, and when his mother died, his dad had been retired. His dad gave 5 years of his life to the missions in Zambia. He had a lot to give, and he went over there and gave of his talents and knowledge, whatever he could do, and came back. That's another way if we feel called to do that. So we're called in many ways to be missionaries. So I just want to mention that, and I'm grateful for being here at St. Joe's. I thank Father Dan and the others who have been so helpful for me, so welcoming, and I consider it a privilege to be here and minister with you and celebrate with you this evening. So I just ask again if you cannot give today, that maybe you can give in the future, or take an envelope home with you and put it in the collection in another week. So may God bless you, and thank you again.